Are you one of the thousands of people who are interested in getting started podcasting in 2025? Well, I've put together a checklist on things you should consider when getting started. I'm Brian. I'm the founder of Autozy and the host of the Curve Ahead podcast. These are some of my personal recommendations. I will have links to all the equipment discussed today in the description below. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment and I will get back to you. The first thing to consider is a microphone. Yes, you do have a microphone built into your computer or your phone, but the quality there isn't that great. So let's kind of talk through the different options. There are 1,000 different microphones out there. There's lapel mics, there's stand mics, there are dynamic mics. I won't bog down too much on those sorts of details, but if you want me to do a separate segment on different microphone types, let me know. So a really popular mic for podcasting is the Shure mic, either the MV7 or the SM7B. Both of those are top quality microphones. You won't go wrong with either one. The applications for that are pretty much endless, so if you do choose one of those, congratulations, you have a top quality mic. There are some other great competitors out in this same space. Rode makes quite a few great mics if you're looking to just getting started. I think the Rode Pod 2 is a great option, as well as the Blue Yeti. Let's talk about cameras. I think that cameras kind of fall into multiple different categories. So if you're just getting started, you can use your webcam or your phone. Everybody has a phone nowadays. All you really would need then is a tripod. From there, if you're looking for something that's a little bit more high quality, you could shoot on something like the Sony Alpha ZV-E10, like I am right now. Or if you want to do the top quality camera, consider the Sony Ace or the F30. Me personally, I think it's a little bit overkill for a podcast application. If you're considering doing a video type podcast, remember lighting is going to be key. See all the lights around me? Well, I've spent quite a lot of time, if you've seen any of my content over the last year, evolving how the light looks in my space. And really, I only have a couple of lights in my office, other than these accent lights. I've got a key light over here that I can control both the temperature and the brightness. So what does that mean? The temperature is just kind of how yellow to blue the actual light appears. The brightness is key to make sure that you're not appearing washed out. And then ahead of me, I also have a secondary light that helps kind of make sure that I am not kind of a shadow from here over. But for my little accessory lights, that one I bought from IKEA. It has its own dimmer. It's quite cool. This one is just a little can light that has a color changing RGB bulb in it. That's controlled through an app. If you need those details, let me know. Let's talk light recommendations. So if you're a beginner just trying to get some light into your space, look at what light you already have in there and see if that looks okay on camera. A lot of times you'll see too much light and you'll become washed out. So you'll need to consider something like a blackout curtain or a way to be able to control the light that's coming into your space so you can control the light in your space. But if you're just getting started and you're looking for a decent introduction into lights, consider the newer 2-pack. Consider the newer 2-pack dimmable LED softbox. It's a great starter light for under $100. In that intermediate range, the Elgato key light is about $200. And if you are full-time doing video content creation, I would suggest to use the Aperture 120. There's the D, and then there's also an RGB version. But remember, make your space cool to look at, especially if you're going to spend time on camera. It's not just you who gets to enjoy it, it's your audience as well as your guests. The next thing to consider, regardless of if it's an audio or video podcast, is headphones. You want to be able to hear your guest as soon as they're speaking. There are a huge variety of headphones out there depending on what your budget is. Just make sure that, one, they're comfortable for you to wear for an extended period of time. They fit within your budget parameters, and that you aren't hearing too much of a delay through your headphones when you are speaking. I will put some recommendations below. A really important thing to consider is the platform where you are recording your podcast. And by that, I mean where you're logging in to have that conversation if you are hosting a virtual guest. There is a lot of people out there who both love Descript and Riverside. Personally, for my podcast, I use Riverside to capture the audio and video. It is quite easy for me to go in and edit on a first pass edit, and then I export and do a secondary edit. But if you're considering an audio only podcast, some recommended softwares are Audacity, Adobe Audition, or Pro Tools. And I think Pro Tools may be a little bit of overkill. Other equipment for a podcast, a pop filter. Basically, it's just a little thing that goes in front of your microphone or over top of your microphone. Your mic provider may have one specific for yours. And then if your microphone does not include stand, a boom arm, that's just kind of an arm that attaches to your desk that holds the microphone in place. Some other things also to consider when you are using a camera that is outside of your computer. So like I said, I'm shooting this on the Sony ZV-E10, and in order for me to do that, I need to have a capture card. So it's a device that goes into my computer that allows my camera to act as a pseudo webcam without recording directly to the camera. Another thing to consider buying is a dummy battery. That way it prevents any sort of overheating issues with your camera, and it allows you to record for much longer periods of time versus just like the 30 or 40 minutes a normal camera battery would allow you to do. One thing that I didn't really talk a whole lot on is an audio interface or a mixer. A lot of the software nowadays has enough information in it for you to be able to control your gain inputs. If you are using an external microphone, you will have software in there to be able to control a lot of your filtering. I know I use the Blue Yeti, and there's a pretty substantial software that supports the actual microphone itself. I would highly suggest, if you have one of those mics, to spend 10 minutes to play around with your filters to see how you sound. A lot of those softwares allow you to record yourself on loop and then listen to it back as you're applying and removing filters. But if you are considering an external audio interface, the Focusrite Scarlett Solo is a great intro option. Or if you're thinking about being a podcaster full time who's doing a ton of editing, the Rodecaster Pro 2 is a great piece of equipment, although it's quite expensive. Let's talk about some other things to consider when doing a podcast. If you're considering booking guests, there are a couple of different ways that I would suggest doing that. Finding a service that allows you to reach out to other people interested in podcasting and booking through them may be a good option. There are a couple of services out there that aren't necessarily super expensive that is easy to do. One of those services that I would recommend would be Podmatch. And no, I'm not at all affiliated with Podmatch, but check them out. Or you can go old-fashioned and do LinkedIn outreach on people that seem interested, or other social media platforms. Instagram or Reddit may help you find other podcast guests. Another thing to consider when booking time with guests is consider a scheduling tool like Calendly to be able to allow them to book time on your calendar that works for the both of you. You can actually use, in my case, I use my Riverside link to my studio, and it's connected directly to my Calendly. Another huge thing for you to consider when you're getting into podcasting is sending read-aheads to your guests. This can just kind of be a simple outline of the questions you're planning to ask. The other part of that is just the follow-up, making sure that you're following up with your guests, that you're saying thank you because they took time out of their day to be a part of your show. And then also taking the time to set expectations on when they can see the content being out in the open. In my experience, when I have allowed all of my guests to understand when their podcast would be released. They've actually helped generate buzz about appearing on the show and cross-posted it. If there's any questions that I didn't answer in this video, feel free to drop a comment below and I will get back to you. And if you're looking to get into podcasting, looking for someone to help you kind of through that initial bit, reach out. One of the things that we focus on is getting podcasts off the ground. Free to check out my website, either for Autozy or for Curve Ahead. And if you're a business owner who's interested in being a guest on Curve Ahead, send me an email.